I'm Steve Wilkerson, and I'm with Jim Saunders, Executive Editor of the News Service of Florida. Jim, the Charlie Crist for Governor campaign called a press conference on Monday featuring a whistleblower going back to the days when Rick Scott was CEO of the Columbia HCA Corporation, and the whistleblower had filed a lawsuit during his time there about fraud within that corporation while Mr. Scott was the CEO. And along with that press conference, there's been a spate of television spots and other forms of media saying that basically Rick Scott is a fraud and a crook and everything else. Is this now a major theme of the Crist campaign?
I think we're going to see it a lot during the final month of the campaign. The Democrats tried this back in 2010 when Alex Sink was their nominee, and frankly, it didn't really stick as well as they had hoped. And I think they're trying to be more concerted about it this year. And they are, as you said, they're already running a lot of TV ads, trying to make question Scott's honesty, his integrity, and they're using this Columbia HCA case as the main part of that. Columbia HCA wound up paying $1.7 billion in fines as related to Medicare fraud as a result of this investigation. And Governor Scott resigned or left the company during the course of that whole episode. He was never charged with anything or formally prosecuted in any way or anything. So but there is that this is a huge Medicare fraud case that was under his watch, essentially. And the Crist campaign is trying to drive home the point that he was in charge and that he should be responsible and you can't trust him. That's their message.
Well, what is the comeback from the Scott campaign, or what is the strategy to try to answer this?
Well, part of it is going back to the 2010 campaign. Governor Scott has said, I was in charge, but I didn't know that this was going on. And, I take responsibility because it was under my watch, but I didn't do it, essentially. And but also the Scott campaign this year has really come back at Charlie Crist and questioning some of his past associations. I would bet people in most parts of the state had never heard of the name Scott Rothstein before this election cycle, but he was a close Charlie Crist supporter when Crist was the Republican governor in the past, and it turned out that Rothstein was also a Ponzi schemer who became pretty infamous, if you will, in South Florida. So they have tried to link Crist with Rothstein, and they've been running ads all over the state trying to do that. And whether you know the details of this Ponzi scheme or not, the goal is to try to create this sort of shadowy connection between Crist and Rothstein to try to, again, sort of take on Crist on this turf.
Negative advertising in campaigns, everyone would admit, is effective. That's why it's used so much. But it also builds up a candidate's negative ratings when the candidate uses negative attacks on the opponent. And I wonder, in the case of Charlie Crist, where he has been essentially a happy sort of candidate, a feel-good kind of candidate, if his negatives might not go up a little faster than normal because he's not happy Charlie anymore. He's on the attack. He's kind of nasty Charlie.
I think there's two things to think about with this. The Scott campaign started running negative ads about Charlie Crist months ago. And if you watch the poll numbers, his positives went down, Crist's negatives went up. Those ads seem to have an effect on the public's perception of whether Charlie Crist was trustworthy and honest. Now, to your point, I think one of the interesting things about this campaign is that Crist has been very negative. He has not really laid out a positive vision, policy, big policy picture vision of the state. in a lot of circumstances. It's been attacking Scott over his honesty. It's been attacking him whether he's too close to insurance companies and utilities and big business and not looking out for the consumers and so on. But Crist has not, at this point at least, really laid out a positive vision like we all remember him campaigning on in the past.